My name is Letitia Bahuyo. I am coming to you from Oklahoma, specifically Norman, Oklahoma. I serve as the Vice President for the Mid-South Sculpture Alliance and the Chair for online panels. It's my pleasure to be one of your hosts today for the first preview event for the upcoming Confab. And so for today, we are meeting with and speaking with Isaac Duncan, who is the keynote speaker and the juror for the indoor exhibition, with Mike Barclay, who is a chair for the indoor exhibition committee, and Brian Massey, who he and I serve together on the online panels committee. So with that, we want to make sure that everybody realizes and remembers that Confab, Mid-South Sculpture Alliance's Confab, is coming up soon. It's October 3rd and 4th in Huntsville, Alabama. There's all kinds of information already online. Check our Instagram, check the websites. Go ahead and start making plans. But specifically, the exhibition calls are up and running. So we're doing these meetings right now to help advertise and answer any questions about the exhibitions. And then the next month, we're going to be meeting with the recently announced scholarship recipients. They're going to be also part of Confab. And so we're going to spend August meeting with them. And then we're in September, as we get even closer to the October Confab dates, we're going to be having additional conversations with the panelists and the speakers that will be part of Confab as well. So a whole bunch of little trailers to help bring the idea closer and closer to something it is that we recognize we cannot miss. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Brian Massey. So Brian, if you would be so kind to introduce our primary speaker.
Thanks, Letitia. I appreciate that. It gives me great honor to introduce Isaac Duncan III. We go back quite a ways as sculptors and also as friends, but he's a sculptor based in Chattanooga, Tennessee, born in Brooklyn and of Caribbean descent. He earned his BFA from the University of Notre Dame and art education certificate from St. Mary's College, and has an MFA from the University of Kentucky. His large-scale metal sculptures are held in public and private collections, including Georgia Tech, the city of Chattanooga, and even in Quebec. A past president of Mid-South Sculpture Alliance, Isaac now serves on the boards of International Sculpture Center and Stoveworks, and is very active in the Tennessee Arts Commission panels. He's also was a 2017 Individual Artist Fellow. Welcome with me today, Isaac Duncan III.
Yay.
Thank you very much for that intro.
And with Isaac in this conversation is Mike Barclay. Mike has served on the Mid-South Sculpture Alliance board for 3 years and currently chairs the Indoor Exhibition Committee. He is an independent curator and collections manager based in Indianapolis. Through his company, 60 on Center, Mike provides arts counseling, curation, and project management. He also serves as curator and collections manager for Eskenazi Health, where he oversees one of Indiana's largest public art collections. Mike holds degrees in fine arts, art history, and museum studies, and has curated exhibitions with the organizations such as Indianapolis Contemporary, the City of Columbus, and of course, Mid-South Sculpture Alliance. Mike Barclay, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it. Thank you, Alicia. Or Letitia. Whoa, why did I stutter like that?
It's okay.
Ah. Hi. Well, it is such a pleasure to be here today with everybody and with all the members of MSA. Just to have this conversation today and talk a little bit with Isaac, and then also talk a little bit about the upcoming members exhibition that's coming up that Isaac will be jurying for so graciously. So I would like to start in referencing saying that if you have not checked out duncansculpture.com, please do, so you can get a lovely view of the body of work that Isaac has been turning out for a number of years. I mean, truly, truly talented artist, amazing work, and a variety of work as well. So I think that's important to understand from today's discussion, kind of how he works and what he's doing. So Isaac, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing space today. It's such a pleasure to be in this conversation with you today.
Same here. You know, having like minds and having a great group of people, organization here support you, even though you're no longer apart intimately, but you always know that you still have that family that's there with MSA.
Yeah. Dang. Yeah. Well, welcome back. We're excited to have you here. So I think just to jump in, I will say that, I was reviewing your work and looking at it. And one of the things that I noticed right away was that you do work at a number of scales. You work from monumental scale, like in public artworks that you'd expect outdoors, as well as things that can be more privately held in smaller spaces, like a garden sculpture or pedestal pieces for exhibitions. But then you also are doing wall-based sculpture as well. So that is a variety of scale there. And I was just curious on how does this variety affect your intention when in the creation process, and does it aid the process when you're working? Do specific sizes work better versus others?
Yeah, so, the variety of scales just comes from the whole premise of me being a sculptor and working within the realm of space. And so for me, I take the title pretty seriously. And it's like if I'm going to do something, I need to explore all the possibilities within that realm. So having pieces that come off walls, having pieces that operate where you can walk under or hold in your hand or walk around. You know, each piece and each scale gives a different sense of intimacy to a person. I want to make sure that I investigate those spaces along with give those type of information and opportunities to the viewers and audience that experience the pieces. And when I usually create, I create at a smaller scale for the most part. Um, as my primary sketches and maquettes. And then from there, I'll go to a larger one, especially for commissions. And when I do that, what happens is that I go from the thought process through my body to the creation of that piece into this physical realm. So the manifestation of the thought goes straight through into the actual piece. And when I'm doing that, it informs me about things that I have to consider and how weight needs to be distributed on a larger scale. So I can pretty much figure out if I do them proportionally within the same size or proportion if I use the proportions correctly, even when I amplify in a larger scale, I can still understand where the balance, the center of gravity of pieces are, on a smaller piece before I even attempt it on a larger piece.
Yeah. Mm, that's interesting. Yeah. And I imagine that, space is very important in your work, and that's part of the process. You are creating a space. You want that moment for a person to ponder, reflect, but also ponder and reflect upon themselves too in their interaction with the work. And so
Yeah.
I feel like that space has to transition and change in the different scales. We talked earlier today, and we talked about how like a monumental piece can be overpowering and larger than yourself, but then a smaller piece can be more intimate and personal as well. But that communication of space is still vitally important. And I think that message is still there, regardless of the sizes.
Yeah, thank you. And that pull push relationship that I call it is very important. I love to dabble with my pieces and have certain pieces give more of a push or more of a pull, to give you that sense of that this is larger than, or it is larger than, or you are larger than. Those different
Mhm.
emotions when coming up next to something that is of scale, which is large, or that does not have the scale, which is small, which puts you in the sense of the larger being holding that piece.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. Um, One of the things I also noticed too, and having its variety of sizes and the variety of work that you have, the one thing I thought was really interesting is you truly have a very developed visual language. There's this consistency of symbology, imagery, movement, feeling. All of that is happening in all of these pieces, and I think you've got an amazingly developed vocabulary that transitions so easily to these different scales and different manners, but yet it's still consistently you, and that is like it's your voice every time, and I that is a truly amazing thing. So I'm curious in the symbology as well. How did you develop this visual language? We see a lot of geometric patterns. Where are these things coming from, and how did you develop this, and how does it speak for you?
So it's interesting because my earlier pieces when I was in undergrad were more political, social, more identity focus, issues, things that I was going through during the time, things that happened, the place I was surrounded, being in a new place without any full support, but the support that I was able to gain through my community that I created, within the arts, within friends, roommates. And it gave me a time to investigate certain things for me to find out who I was and who I wanted to be. And after leaving an institution with that safety net, I started creating some pieces. But also, I started teaching elementary school because one of the things that I studied was art education. And it was interesting because it was the repetition of teaching elementary school kids the basics, going back to the basics of, lines. When you put lines together, you have three of them, at least three lines crossing each other, you create a shape. You take that shape and you put a couple of shapes together and connect them to create a form. The form, in the three-dimensional realm is a sculpture, so it was just that teaching, going back to the basics that I wanted to go back to in my work, where it wasn't in the sense of those personal investigations, because I did those personal investigations as a way to communicate, but also it was a lot for me. Um, it was my journey. And afterwards, it came to a point that I wanted to shift my journey and communicate a different way where it wasn't so in the face for some of the things that I wanted to talk about. So I went more into a more subversive way of creating pieces and way of reaching out to an audience in a way where I want them to naturally be who they are, where they're and pose certain questions to them when they're looking at the work, and without them coming into a space and saying, "Oh, well, I have to approach it this way or that way," and which sometimes certain works can do.
Well, I think that's very important, especially if you're doing public art, because in public art there's no one path to approach a public sculpture. When it's in the space in the round, it is in the round. You approach it from every angle. So there's multiple ways, and you can always approach it differently. You can come three different ways if you want to approach and see something. So I think that's important to keep that consistent in that, you know? Yeah. Lovely. One thing I do want to ask you too, you mentioned about being subversive. And when it's abstract and geometric patterns, it seems very abstract. It can be what it is, and it's left up to the person's interpretation. But you embed subversiveness. You have messages and meanings in it from the materials to the symbology in that. And I was curious if you wanted to talk a little bit about maybe its materials, and sort of the symbology of your material use.
Yeah. So, one of the things that people don't I would say don't understand unless they hear it from me, of course, when you do research on artists or hear
Mhm.
artists speak, is the materials. Like a lot of people like, oh, why do you always use stainless? Is it just because, stainless is low maintenance for outdoor pieces? It's like some people like, well, isn't like stainless kind of cliche? There was a time that every sculptor was working stainless. Why are you still doing that? And I was like, no, stainless for me is identifier. Stainless steel, bronze, brass, aluminum. Um, they're alloys, and alloys are materials that are mixed to create this new form, this new material, this new other metal. And to me, that's just my history in a nutshell, right? I'm a person of multi-heritage. Um, my parents refuged to this country from Cuba, so I'm of Latin descent. But also, my grandfather immigrated to Cuba, and he was from Jamaica. So the Afro-Latin mixture that I have, Caribbean background, is my foundation. However, I was born here in America, and I'm 100% American in the sense of believing in rights and ethos of liberty and justice for all, and taking it to heart. So when I look at um, stainless and bronze and materials I work in, I see this mixed type of material, which is strong. That is only strong because it's a mixed type of material. Um, and so I keep that close to me as I work. And the other thing with my works is that I don't paint my work. I take the color, I take the properties of what it is to be what it is. and I'll grind them to get some patterns so you can see my strokes, my hand as an artist into the piece. But ultimately, it is what it is, right? And that's how I like people to look at my work, come to my work, enjoy my work. But it also brings to the question if a person can accept this inanimate, this object, this abstracted thing that's in front of them and like it and adore it, um, why is it as humans we can't do the same thing to our neighbors who's right next to us, who's as equally interesting and of value and abstract in their own ways? So it's this. I believe that my pieces are conduits for conversation, and these are the conversations that I like to have, and reasons why I put my pieces out there, so that we can have these conversations. We can show these juxtapositions of being able to accept something or not accept something, but ultimately we really should.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. I love the meaning and the message behind your materials. I think it's vitally important for people to understand that and hear that. And I think those are things that we can take into our everyday life, you know? Yeah. Well, thinking about that and thinking about how your works take up space, and the spaces that we inhabit and how we interact in the space with the objects, it also reminds me of why you're bringing yourself back to MSA to be a wonderful juror for us, because we do have this upcoming members exhibition called The Spaces That We Inhabit, and the call is currently open. If members don't know about it yet, you can find it under the exhibitions tab on the MSA website. And it is open. It is open until August 31st. So we have just 6 weeks left till this call ends, everybody. So tick tock on that. But we're thrilled to have you during this show because it's part of our confab and it'll be on the UAH campus in Huntsville, Alabama, and it's at a beautiful gallery that is a former church. So there's a lot of layers to the exhibition, and with the exhibition theme that we're having, and it's also working with the juror as well. Space is a constant continuum throughout the conversation. So we're inhabiting a former church, probably the oldest church in Alabama that is now an art gallery on the campus. So that's itself has a history, but then we're bringing it into ourselves to explain our understanding of the spaces that we inhabit and the way that we interact with our spaces, and we're allowing artists to explain their versions and their feelings with it. So if everyone has had a chance, hopefully you've checked out the call, but I'm excited to have you during this because I do, since space is very vital to your work, I'm just sort of curious about what it is you'll be looking at while you're jurying and how you have a jurying process. Everybody has a different one, and sometimes we all are kind of similar, sometimes we're not. But I'm just interested in your perspective of how you like to attack something like this. This is challenging.
Yeah, it's challenging, but it's going to be great because I've done art fairs, juried art, small art exhibitions, student exhibitions, and it's interesting to see how people either relate to the theme or the topic. It's interesting to see all the different works and investigations that are happening out there. Um, and with this one, it's having it in a church is going to be really interesting to see how the works show, and if the context of it being in the church is also going to bring any of the pieces any different meaning, which is going to be interesting to see as we curate the show. However, when I first look at works, the first thing I do is go through the artwork itself. I don't look at names. I prefer names not to be on any information that I have. Um, I like to have a library of information that talks about the pieces. However, I don't touch it until afterwards. I really like to go through a couple of rotations of looking at the images, try to visualize the pieces, see the different angles. Hopefully, people will send in multiple angles of the pieces. And then after that, I go back again to see those that really spoke to me. So I look through those again. And then I start to investigate, take look at their information that they sent, their artist statement, and listen to look to that and see how that works with the story that they've created in the object to the story that they've written. And then after that, I go back and to the ones that didn't speak to me on the first round and look at them again with the piece with again the statements and see what did I miss or why did not I did not it did not call out to me in the first round so that I give enough respect for each person, their time and their pieces. Even if it wasn't the first ones to click off, I want to go back and make sure again before I make my final decisions.
Yeah. I love that because it's giving everybody a shot, but also making sure that you're checking yourself as well,
Right.
you know?
Right. And the thing is that, it's, as a juror, I think it's my responsibility to do those due diligence,
Mhm.
and give that respect because in the end, everybody's sharing themselves, right?
Yeah.
And you want to make sure you give the proper respect of people that are sharing.
Mhm. Well, and it's also very challenging too because you're only viewing images as versus the actual three-dimensional object. It's sort of funny when you're juring artworks of an artwork, so to speak, because
Yeah.
you're, looking at a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional object. So it's kind of amazing to have to do that and to jury in that process. It can be challenging, but I'm the same way as you. I like to review the work. I like to sit with the work and think about the work. And sometimes I like to sit with it for a couple of days
Yeah.
and then go back in and start reviewing and finding out like whose perspective this is and where they're coming from and their backgrounds and then also reading about the pieces as well, because that I feel like that gives me a little more of a whole picture. But I love that first impression. That first
Yeah.
impression sits with you for a reason.
Right.
And so you need to understand that before you make those judgments on it. So yeah, I love that. Um, Thank you so much for sharing some time with us today and talking about this. We're going to sort of wrap it up here, but yeah, any thoughts about being back at MSA now for this?
I believe it's going to be like a homecoming, especially when I'm there in Huntsville, part of a confab. As we talked earlier, I was president of MSA for about 7 years. And so I've done many confabs and conferences, so I know what goes behind it. I know the work and the love and the passion that everybody that's a part of the board, that's a part of the committee, what they bring. So it's great to be able to not have to do that, but to also enjoy it and it's an honor to be a part of it and be a keynote speaker. Um, so it's like coming home again.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're so thrilled to have you back. Thank you so much for doing this. And just the last few words for everyone out there that's watching. August 31st is the deadline for this exhibition submission. So please get your stuff in. Also, just when you're thinking about it too, as we just talked about, thinking about how it is when you submit, you have up to 10 images. You can submit more than one image of each object. You're talking about objects in the round. So sometimes objects from various angles and sides are very good. You're hearing it from the gentleman himself over there. And then also, those descriptors, those small little artist statements and paragraphs that you write explaining your perspective of your work are vitally important to how we do these processes and how we assess work. We actually are reading those. They're very important. Um, yeah, if Letitia and Brian want to join us to say goodbye, they can at this point. But I think it's time for MSA to be signing off since this is a brief little afternoon for everybody. But yeah,
Oh, thank you
thank
both
you,
so
everyone.
much. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Mike. Brian, I saw you posted a question real quick. If we don't mind, we'll take maybe 2 more minutes
Yeah.
of y'all's time. Brian, what was the question?
Yeah, I just posed a question to Isaac. What is the most important piece of advice you can give to a young up and coming sculptor?
Be connected. Be connected. Make your work, but as you know, and you should know by now, as on being a sculptor is that to be a sculptor is to work with many. We all can't like build pieces and set them up and deal with logistics all by ourselves. So that's one thing to consider. The other stuff, you're probably on the way doing it anyway, making work, being passionate, learning getting skills and refining your skills, being creative. But something that's not really taught is, you have to be out there. You have to be connected. You have to have your support, especially if you're a sculptor that's in a young sculptor in academia. Um, when you leave academia, you don't have access to a lot of things. So you're going to have to seek it. If you're a sculptor who's self-taught, and you do have some stuff, some tools, as you should know, when you need to go get something metal or any type of materials, you're going to meet other people. So forge those relationships because relationships at the end are the ones that's going to really help you excel and make you feel confident and not alone within this world of art. So if you want to hear more, come to Confab.
Good pitch. I like that. Nice add in. No, and what you're describing is so true. All of those parts, and why I think Confab and MSA are so important. And so, as Mike described and gave some advice about how to apply, and then this dialogue that Isaac has already set forth here, please come and keep joining all of our upcoming previews and definitely mark your calendars for October 3rd and 4th in Huntsville, Alabama. See you then. Thank you all. And I think the stream has ended.